Leora followed the frozen river as it meandered through the city, each bend revealing streets she had already walked 100 times in her mind. The water ran sluggishly, thick with ice and debris, and she kept to the banks, careful not to slip on the frost. The river reflected the dull sky like a silvered mirror, empty yet insisting she move forward. Her footsteps echoed faintly against the cracked stone embankment. Every sound seemed amplified in the silence. A crow in the distance, the faint groan of ice shifting, the soft thrum of her own pulse. She spoke aloud, naming the street signs, the ruins, even the empty shop fronts, as if the act of naming could anchor the memory of the city and resist its erasure. Leora stopped at a collapsed bridge. She ran her fingers along the broken railing, tracing rusted metal and splintered wood. The bridge had once carried people, laughter, urgency. Now it carried only shadows and wind. She exhaled slowly and continued along the river's edge, letting the rhythm of her steps replace the absent heartbeat of the city. She scavenged what she could. A bundle of firewood hidden behind a fallen wall. An empty tin of preserved food, still sealed. A fragment of cloth to patch her coat. Each item was a small victory, a tangible proof that she could still exist here, that she could endure. By afternoon, she found a small alcove tucked beneath a collapsed building. It would serve as shelter tonight. She unpacked her few belongings, the mirror shard she called Truth, her worn journal, and the flickering solar lamp. Setting the lamp near the alcove entrance, she caught her reflection in the shard. Her face looked younger than she felt, yet etched with determination. Leora wrote in the journal, capturing the minutiae of survival, where she found water, what she had eaten, which streets were safest to traverse. Recording these details grounded her, made the emptiness of the city manageable. She paused often, listening to the river, the occasional gust of wind, the world that remained. Even in its stillness it pulsed, small, fragile but alive. When night fell, she built a fire from collected driftwood. The flames painted her face in warm amber and cast long shadows against the frost-covered ruins. She ate sparingly, letting the rhythm of survival pace her, and curled against the stone alcove, holding the mirror shard close. The shards of reflection whispered faintly. Not voices, not shapes, but an awareness, a quiet affirmation. She was not entirely alone. The waking world had chosen her, or perhaps she had chosen it. Either way, she was its witness, its keeper, and she would not look away. Leora closed her eyes. The river murmured. The wind sighed. And for the first time since the city had emptied, she felt the quiet pulse of being, enough to carry her into another day. Morning came without sunlight, just a gradual lifting of the dark, as if the world itself had forgotten how to rise. Leora stirred from her makeshift shelter, her body stiff from the cold. The fire had died hours ago, leaving only the smell of smoke and the faint warmth pressed into stone. She packed her satchel carefully, journal, mirror shard, lamp, and followed the river back toward the city's heart. She moved silently, more by instinct than purpose, guided by the old roads that still remembered where they led. The marketplace stood at the city's center, or what was left of it. Stalls lay toppled and half buried in frost. The banners that once declared color and trade now hung in ribbons, their symbols fading into the pale air. Her boots crunched over broken glass and scattered coins. A hollow wind swept through, stirring the remnants like breath through a ghost chest. She paused before one stall, its sign read Seeds and Sundries. Beneath the ice-coated counter lay small packets sealed in wax. She brushed the frost away and smiled faintly. Seeds for a world that might never wake. Still, she pocketed a few, whispering, "If you survived the cold, perhaps I can too." Further on, she found a broken kiosk where someone had left a stack of old books, their pages frozen together. She pried one loose and tucked it into her bag. Not for reading, the words were mostly gone, but for burning later if she needed warmth. The thought ached, but necessity had no sentiment. The market square stretched wide and open, surrounded by collapsed facades and silent arcades. She could almost feel the press of people that used to fill it. The chatter, the sense of bread and spice, the hum of life before it all turned inward to dream. Leora closed her eyes and let the memory flood her senses until the quiet settled again. When she opened them, she caught movement in the distance. Not a person, but a shimmer, as though the air bent around something unseen. She blinked hard. It was gone. Just the play of frost, she told herself. Just light on ice. Still, the feeling lingered. She was being watched, not by eyes, but by memory itself. She climbed the steps of the old clock tower overlooking the square. The climb was long and steep, each breath a cloud of white. At the top, she found the great clock face frozen mid-tick, its hands locked in place at 12:01. Time's last gesture. Leora sat on the ledge, looking out over the city. From this height, she could see the pods faint, silver dots scattered in clusters across the landscape, their light dimming one by one. Beyond them stretched forests rimmed in frost and, far beyond that, mountains she had never reached. Leora stayed until her lamp dimmed. Then she climbed down, one hand always on the cold iron rail, and made her way back toward the river. That night she dreamed of the market as it had been, bright, alive. But when she woke, the frost on her coat had melted slightly, as if something unseen had listened and answered. The frost was different that morning. Leora noticed it as soon as she stepped outside. The patterns weren't random anymore. They curled and branched in deliberate spirals across the pavement, like sketches half erased by the wind. When she crouched to touch one, the chill pulsed faintly beneath her fingertips. As though the ground were breathing, she drew her hand back, heart thudding. "It's just the thaw," she said aloud. Though her breath clouded in the still frozen air, the city didn't answer, but the silence felt aware. She walked the river path again, her boots crunching through thin ice. The sound echoed strangely, returning not once but twice, as though another pair of footsteps followed a heartbeat behind her own. When she stopped, it stopped. When she turned, nothing. Just the pale sky and the endless drift of frost. The mirror shard in her satchel quivered faintly. She hesitated, then pulled it free. Its surface shimmered, no longer reflecting the grey ruins but something beneath them. A faint golden lattice like veins under skin, pulsing with a slow, measured rhythm. The same rhythm she had felt in the pods. "No," she whispered. "You're supposed to be sleeping. Not here." But as she moved, the reflections shifted, tracing her steps. The lattice beneath the city pulsed in time with her heartbeat, like it was listening, adjusting to her rhythm, or maybe syncing with. By midday, the wind carried faint harmonics, not music but tone, a low hum threading through the air, subtle enough to mistake for memory. She followed it toward the square, drawn as if by gravity. By midday, the wind carried faint harmonics, not music, but tone, a low hum threading through the air, subtle enough to mistake for memory. She followed it toward the square, drawn as if by gravity. "You hear me," she said quietly. A ripple ran through the air, gentle, affirmative. Leora stood very still, hand on the nearest pod. "Then what happens?" she murmured. "If I stay awake too long?" The hum wavered, not warning, not threat, just acknowledgement. The faint suggestion of a presence both vast and intimate, as though the world had turned its head toward her. She stepped back, heart trembling. The frost shifted in her footprints, sealing them over, not to erase but to preserve. That night, when she built her small fire near the clock tower ruins, the flames burned pale gold instead of orange. The smoke rose straight up into the still sky and didn't disperse. The lattice was closer now. She could feel it beneath her skin. A second pulse. As she wrote in her journal, her hand trembled slightly, not from cold, but from the sense that her words were no longer hers alone. If the world is listening, then it remembers what it lost. Maybe it needs a witness to stay real. Maybe that's what I've become. She closed the book. The fire flickered, answering with a faint echo of her last breath. And for the first time, Leora wondered whether staying awake had been an act of resistance or invitation.